If you'll bear with me, I told everyone that I wanted to have my say today as well. So a few weeks ago, I was on the docks at the Port of Cleveland. I stood before a massive ocean-going container vessel that had carried the Johnny Kilbane sculpture to Cleveland. I told my companions, this all started as a plaque. The journey from a plaque to an artwork of world-class significance was an amazing one. It's a journey that took a family, a neighborhood, a community, a special artist of extraordinary sensitivity, and now all of you. First, the family. Johnny Kilbane's daughter, Mary O'Toole, lovingly tended the photographs, mementos, and stories of her father's career as boxing's longest reigning world champion. Today, 22 of the direct descendants of Johnny and Mary O'Toole are with us today. Let's recognize them with a round of applause. I'll let Johnny's great-grandson, Kevin O'Toole, stand in for those 22. It took Kevin combing through those old photographs, as well as public records, to create a website in his great-grandfather's honor and to embark on the quest to restore that rare nitrate film that his grandmother had so innocently saved. Then it took the Irish-American community. Let's start with everyone who grew up thinking they were related to Johnny Kilbane. Shirt-tail cousins, distant relations, or no relations at all, no matter what your grandmother told you. And it took the fact that that web of cousinship extends, let's face it, to all of the many Clevelanders whose families originated on Ackle Island or first settled in the Angle near St. Malachy's, as Johnny Kilbane's family and so many of our families did. It took Johnny staying in Cleveland rather than taking his talents to New York. It took him living in the same kinds of houses and neighborhoods that all of his Ackle and Angle neighbors did, and lending a helping hand when needed, so that the grandmothers, uncles, family friends passed down the name of Johnny Kilbane as one of their own. So that when fireman Michael Sporty Kilbane, one of those perhaps distant relations, began a few years ago to talk up the 100th anniversary of Johnny Kilbane's first title fight in 2012, he got the ear of Jerry Quinn and Colleen Corrigan Day of the Mayo Society, and of many others. When another one of those distant Kilbane relations, Galway-based filmmaker Des Kilbane, brought a documentary film about Johnny to the Cleveland International Film Festival in 2013, the screening sold out many times over. The Irish-American community had already supported the famine memorial in the Flats, the renovation of the cultural gardens, and we were gratified and hopeful to think that they might support our project as well. This journey took an organization devoted to the history of the Irish in Cleveland, the Irish American Archives Society. It's an organization that had acquired the capacity and community standing to lead the effort that Sporty had begun, so that when the Archives Society pitched collaboration on a display about Johnny Kilbane, the Cleveland Public Library and its chair, Tom Corrigan, were willing to say yes. Tom believed so strongly in the endeavor that he subsequently joined our board and now serves as our president. But we also needed another community, a neighborhood poised at the crossroads between old and new. Johnny Kilbane happened to have lived on West 74th and Herman, a few blocks south of here at the time of his first title fight. This is a neighborhood that had strong Irish presence since the 1870s and launched the first home of the West Side Irish American Club in the early 1930s. But it's also a neighborhood that has had many caring stewards, a proud succession of working-class people, not just Irish, but Romanian, Italian, Appalachian, and Hispanic. It's a neighborhood that has benefited from an incredible line of committed leaders who grew up here and loved their place, from Michael and Mary Zone to their son Matt, the current councilman, with Judge Ray Pianca right in there in the mix in between. And it's a neighborhood that once might have been counted out, but is now on the rise. And that's in part due to the Detroit Shoreway Community Development Organization, which was launched by Judge Pianca and is now helmed by Jeff Ramsey. This has become a neighborhood of artists, entrepreneurs, urban pioneers willing to take a chance, such as a theater artist at Cleveland Public Theater, near West Theater, Eileen Salmon and Pete Lanahan at Stoneman, and Sean Kilbane at the Happy Dog Saloon. We found ready and willing partners in this neighborhood. In fact, the neighborhood upped the ante. We're standing on the site of the former Ever Ready battery factory. The complex had been shuttered and abandoned since the 1970s. In 2005, the Maroos family, owners of Vintage Development Group, led an extraordinary partnership of public and private resources to reclaim the brownfield, and in an incredible act of faith, started construction on the townhouse development that takes shape around us today. The Maroos brothers had envisioned public art as part of their development plan, and I well remember the day that Matt Zone took us on a tour of the area and challenged the Irish American Archives Society to think bigger than a plaque. It also took intrepid homeowners who shared the developer's vision of an artful place, and as Matt described to you, were willing to spend hours of their own time to hash out the goals for what was now evolving into the Johnny Kilbane Sculpture Project. And if all that wasn't enough, it took an exceptional artist. Archives Society board member Tom Scanlon had challenged us to include an Irish artist in the mix of those we were considering. By some miracle, we found our way to Dublin-based sculptor Rowan Gillespie, and something about our plucky undertaking appealed to him. We're still not sure what. After an interview process, we gave Rowan an impossible design brief, as Matt discussed, a very long list of everything we hoped that his work would express. We wanted one single sculpture to convey the story of a man's whole life, the story of a neighborhood, a community, of an entire city. We urged Rowan to take in the urban skyline in the distance over there, the ore ships out on the lake and the freight trains that provided Johnny with his first jobs and are still the engines of our city's industrial might. We reported to him that Cleveland had been the 5th largest American city during Johnny Kilbane's prime, and we insisted that though it has since plummeted to 45th in size, we still have the foundations and aspirations of a great American city. Johnny was able to reinvent himself several times in a life filled with losses as well as achievements, and we wanted Rowan to link that personal story of resilience with the story of a neighborhood and a city in the process of reinvention and transformation. Tell a story that's emblematic of the Irish American experience, we said, but also, while you're at it, tell a broader story that speaks to a city of immigrants from all over the world. And Rowan Gillespie has our everlasting gratitude for listening patiently, observing keenly, and reflecting deeply. He responded with 3 figures that trace the arc of an individual life, but also speak actually to everything else we had asked for. He worked with unfailing care and attention to detail, casting the bronze himself, creating the sculptures himself, driving them himself to Antwerp so that they could be shipped on a direct route to Cleveland, a service that our Port Authority had just launched this summer. It also took the tradesmen here who matched Rowan's concentration as he worked among them a few weeks ago to install the sculpture. Laborers from Local 310, bricklayers Local 5, Norris Brothers Company, MK Masonry, all gave unstintingly of time and equipment. One of the cement contractors told me that this project was one of the proudest experiences of her working life. Throughout this journey, I've been struck by how often people express personal motivations for their involvement. Whether it was Matt Zone recounting how his mother told him to leave the neighborhood a better place, or Chip Maroos describing his Czech immigrant forebears, or Jack Hale, who spoke about growing up in the projects in the Angle, and the Irish grandmother, Mary Cusick Hale, who helped keep his family together when they fell on hard times. And by the way, our journey really needed Jack and Sherry Hale. Jack Hale was the first person who stepped up with a substantial gift and challenged others to step up as well. Jack, Ray Murphy, Judge Pianka, and so many others gave us confidence that we could actually see this project through. For me and my family, the inspiring person was my grandmother, Beatrice Gallagher Lynch. My grandmother grew up in the Angle. She was about 10 years younger than Johnny and was one of those kids who looked up to him and saw him as one of their own. My grandmother was a wonderful storyteller. Her storytelling about the Angle, about Johnny Kilbane, about our family, gave me a love of history. And I saw honoring Johnny Kilbane as a way to honor her, and also my parents, Tom and Margaret Lynch. My parents, as many of you know, have also valued and protected our Irish heritage and passed the burden and the privilege on to me. I want to thank my parents and my extended family for their wholehearted support of this project. Apologies for the literary folk among you. I'm about to